Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to our latest long-range update. So here we go again, the long-range bandwagon is rolling on. We released our summer forecast 2 weeks ago, and now we're rolling the long-range on to autumn. So the next season that we're going to be concerned with is autumn 2021. Every week from now through to the end of August, we're going to be releasing autumn updates. So we'll be looking at things like QBO, ENSO, solar activity, over the next few weeks with our autumn updates. There's also going to be 3 season model roundups as well, one at the end of June, one at the end of July, and one at the end of August, looking at the long-range models for the autumn. And it's all going to culminate in the GavsWeatherVids autumn forecast that will release at the end of August. So sit back, relax, and enjoy, and we're going to go through our first autumn update for you in a moment. This is going to be looking at spring to autumn data, quite interesting. Right, so I gotta say thank you so much to Rich for the wonderful autumn updates gift. What about that then, everybody? Fantastic colours. I love the autumn gifts because they always, have such vibrant and lovely colours. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Rich for the incredible autumn 2021 updates gift. Thank you so much to Shryan as well, my good friend Shryan Brian, for sorting out all of the relevant years for this update. So thank you so much to Shryan, thank you so much to Richard Trott and Shryan Brim for the help on this autumn update. Thank you so much both. It's going to be quite a long video, of course, as always with the long range. So it will be placed within the autumn updates playlist that's now been created on the channel. So you're able to come back and watch the video on demand whenever you would like to do that. The video will be there, whenever you want it or need it to watch it. You can't watch it all in one go, or if you want to come back at some point and have a look at it again for like reference purposes and whatnot. So watch the video on demand whenever you'd like to do that. Please like, share, subscribe, let us know in the comments what you think. Thank you so much, everybody. The first video today was 7 a.m. forecast. We've got GavsWeatherVids roundup coming up for you in an hour or so's time. And we'll also be live streaming from 6 p.m. Epic day of content on the channel today. Right, okay, so let's turn webcam off and we're going to go through our first autumn 2021 update. The first thing we're going to be looking at is the CT. So this is how the spring comes out in terms of centering temperature. We have March standing at 7.2. We have April standing at 6.4, and we have May standing at 10.1. It was a colder than average spring, our first cold than average spring since 2013. The coldest spring since 2013, actually. CT came out at 7.9, so our CT range for this update is going to be springs of a CT range of 7.8 to 8.0. It places spring 2021 slap bang in middle. And so here we go. Let's do this then. So the first autumn we're going to be looking at following a spring with a CT range of 7.8 to 8.0 is the spring of 1830s, if you autumn I should say, of 1836. I'm getting myself confused already. So this one is a cool and a wet autumn. Of course I'm in summer mode as well, so at some point in this update I'm going to say summer, aren't I? But it's autumn that we're looking at, Gav. Autumn. Right, so the first, let's do it again. The first autumn following a spring with a CT range of 7.8 to 8.0 is a spring of 1836, a cool and wet autumn this, with blocking to the north and low pressure over and to the east and south of the country. Our next autumn is 1850, following a spring CT range of 7.8 to 8.0. How often am I going to say that, I wonder? Right, so this one has above average heights to our north and west, with below average heights extending. I'm so sorry, everybody. Extending through Western and Central Europe. This is a cool and wet autumn. Autumn, Gav. It's a cool, wet autumn with low pressure to the east and high pressure to the northwest. Right, our next autumn, following a spring with a CT range of 7.8 to 8.0, you can follow this, everybody, is the spring of No, it's the autumn of 1851. I can't believe this. So, above average heights to our north and west, below average heights to our south and east, and in comes a wind from a north or northeast direction. I'm going to get it right this time. Okay, so our next autumn, following a spring with a CT range of 7.8 to 8.0, is autumn 1852. I did it. This autumn has northern blocking around Greenland with low pressure across northern and western Europe. The jet stream is pushed southwards. It's a cool and wet spring, wet autumn, probably quite a cold autumn as well. With this one, probably quite a cold autumn with this one. Right, our next autumn is going to be 1857. This was a much drier autumn with high pressure above average heights over and to the northern country, winds coming in from an easterly direction. That looks like a drier autumn. But probably, it's a transitional season, autumn, of course. So, Easter's in September, can be quite warm. Easter's in November, could be quite cold. So, maybe it's a sort of autumn that gets colder as we go along. Our next autumn is 1858. I'm getting it right now. With above average heights to our north and northwest, below average heights to our south, winds in from the east. Because this is a cold and average spring that we have had, we're going to see lots of years from a long time ago. So just bear that in mind about this set of analogues within this package, because there aren't all that many cold springs that have occurred lately. Right, so the autumn of 1858 has high pressure sitting to the north, winds are in from the east. Again, it's transitional season, so that sort of pattern would deliver quite a warm September, but by November that could be pretty cold. Looks relatively dry autumn though. Our next autumn is 1866. This one again rather anticyclonic with above average heights extending down through the western part of Europe, below average heights out in the Atlantic. So that is a drier autumn again. Our next autumn is 1867. Again, quite an anticyclonic signal here. This time the high press centered over and just to the west of the country. So again, we expect a relatively dryish autumn with that one. Next, we have 1869. This one is a rather northerly autumn with above average heights, high pressure away to our west and northwest, below average heights away to our east, and winds are in from a northerly direction. Do I dare do it? Let's try. So our next autumn, following a spring with a CT range of 7.8 to 8.0, is autumn 1897. And look at this, it's another anticyclonic autumn. With above average heights centered over the top of the UK. So again, that's a relatively dry season, you would have thought, with a fair amount of fine, if perhaps increasingly cold weather as the season progresses. Right, we're finally into the 20th century. Our next autumn is 1904, still with an anticyclonic signal in this autumn, above average heights centered over the UK and Western Europe, below average heights, low pressure away to our northwest. Then we have the autumn of 1909. This one with above average heights pulled out into the middle of the North Atlantic, below average heights across much of Western and Northern Europe. This looks like a wetter autumn, I have to say. This is a wetter autumn and probably a cooler autumn as well. Then we have the autumn of 1915. This one with below average heights to our south and blocking, let's change the colour, to the north. And this encompasses the coldest November on CT record. The winter of 1915-1916 was not particularly cold, but certainly the autumn of 1915 got very, very cold in November. Overall blocking and easterly winds with a cold, snowy, wintry November. This one looks very unsettled. This is the autumn of 1923, just with a deep area of below average heights, low pressure over northern and western parts of Europe. That's a very unsettled autumn. Then we have the autumn of 1925. I'm getting into this now, aren't I? I bet I slip up in a moment, though. This one has above average heights to our west and northwest, below average heights to our east and northeast. Probably quite a cool autumn. This winds in from a northeasterly direction. Could be a little bit on the cool and unsettled side in 1925. We're back to high pressure for the autumn of 1931 with above average heights again, centred over top of the UK. That's a relatively anticyclonic autumn. And then we've got the autumn of 1934 showing up next with low pressure around Iceland, high pressure in the middle of the Atlantic, and the jet stream and wind flow is coming in on a west to northwesterly direction like that. A long gap then, how interesting. A long gap from, what was the year? It was 1934, wasn't it? A long gap from 1934 all the way to 1970. The next time we have this CT range of 7.8 to 8.0 in the spring is in 1970. So this is the autumn of 1970. And it has a westerly sort of flow. So it has a high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, and winds are in from a westerly type direction. So a relatively mild and, at the start, relatively dryish sort of autumn. But it does get very wet by November. Then we've got the autumn of 1983, which is another relatively dryish and mild sort of autumn. High pressure is starting to the south, bringing up winds from the southwest. So it does have a wet September, but otherwise October and November 1983 are relatively mild and dry. Another pretty dry autumn for 1985. Definitely a trend to high pressure within these analogues, isn't there? I'm sure there is. Be interesting how it all comes together in a moment. So this is the autumn of 1985. Again, this one has high pressure across West Europe. It has a dry and warm September, but a cold and wintry November. Right, so we start putting all of that together then. This is how all Septembers combined. So that's the last year. That's the last time we have like that CT range of 7.8 to 8.0 in the spring. So this is how all Septembers combined are looking following springs with a CT range of 7.8 to 8.0. So for the Septembers, we tend to get northern blocking, which is quite unusual for September. That's not really a month that we associated with a great deal of northern blocking. But September tends to have northern blocking with below average heights across Western Europe. It allows the wind to come in from an east or northeasterly direction. So probably quite cool and unsettled for those Septembers. October, much more anticyclonic. This is all Octobers combined following that spring CT range of 7.8 to 8.0 with above average height centred over and just to the west of the country, a relatively dry, probably quite mild sort of signal for the Octobers, and another relatively dry sort of signal for the Novembers, all Novembers combined as well, with above average heights to our west, but this time going a little bit more towards the north. So some of these Novembers could definitely bring in some colder weather, actually. So by November, things could be starting to get quite cold, maybe a little bit of wintry potential by then. All autumns combined following spring CT range of 7.8 to 8.0. Again, the above average heights just to our west and going north, below average heights to our east and northeast winds again in from a northerly direction. So it looks like it's a season that's quite mixed. Each month is varying in the pattern. Reasonable amount of dry weather, I think, through these autumns, but getting colder by the time we get through to November, and a relatively unsettled September with some northern blocking as well. Just narrowing things down to the years post 1950, and of course this only gives us 3 years to go at, actually, so I'm not sure how useful this is, but we always look at the years post 1950. So this just gives us 1970, 1983 and 1985. So all Septembers combined with high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, winds in from the west. It's a very wet September in May of 1983. I think the other two are drier and warmer, though. This is how all Octobers combined are looking, following a spring season range of 7.8 to 8.0 post-1950. Only 3 of them anticyclonic with high pressure dominating, so relatively dry and warmish sort of October. And then this is how all Novembers combined are looking, following that spring CT range of 7.8 to 8.0 post-1950, with higher pressure way to the northwest, lower pressure to our south and east, and winds will be in from a northerly direction in most November. So it looks like it's a little bit of colder potential for the November. 1985 is probably skewing that a lot, though, because 1983 and 1970 were not particularly cold in those Novembers. And then finally, this is how all autumns combined are looking, following the spring CT range of 7.8 to 8.0 post-1950. Relatively anticyclonic overall for these autumns. October, of course, playing a big part in that. But yeah, relatively mild and dry signal overall, I suppose. Right, that's our first batch done. Let's just put webcam back on. Hello. Right, so that's the first batch done. I did that okay in the end, didn't I? We had a dodgy start, but Gav pulled it out of the bag, didn't he? We'll see whether I can continue to pull it out of the bag in a moment, because we're going to go through England weather precipitation for this spring and look at spring to autumn data. So, you know, what's going to happen next remains to be seen. But I want to pause the video there. You stretch your legs and get yourself a cup of tea, and we'll be back in around 2 seconds time. I shall see you, well, there we are. I shall see you very, very soon. Okay, we're back, and we're ready to resume the first autumn 2021 update from GavsWeatherVids. I hope you enjoyed the first part of the video. Sorry about the mistakes early on. I pulled it out of the bag, though, in the end, and got myself a little bit more professional as we went along, didn't I? So we shall see what happens with our second batch of analogs. Before the break, we was looking at spring CT to autumn data. This time we're going to be looking at spring precipitation to autumn data. And I shall get on with it for you in a moment. Just say that if you enjoyed the video, please can you give us a like, let us know in the comments what you think. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much, everybody. Doing that. Right, where am I? There we go. Right, so, okay, let's move on. They're going to have a look at England Wales precipitation. So, of course, England Wales precipitation index is a very long-standing index going all the way back to 1766. There it is at the UK Met Office. So if we come down to the current year, 2021, there it is, already highlighted helpfully for you. So we have March with an England Wales precipitation of 51.1 millimetres. We have April exceptionally dry at 13.6 millimetres, and then a very wet May at 122.5 millimetres, top 20 wettest May on record for England Wales precipitation anyway. So that brings us out with a total of 187.2 millimetres. And so our spring range for this part of the update is going to be springs with an England Wales precipitation range of 183 to 191 millimetres, meaning that at 187.2 millimetres, spring 2021 comes in slap bang in the middle. So the first autumn that we're looking at is the autumn of 1841. Again, following that, England Wales spring precipitation range of 183 to 191 millimetres. This autumn has northern blocking with high pressure to the north over Greenland and low pressure across northern and western Europe. The jet stream is pushed southwards. It's a cold and wet spring. No, it's a cold and wet autumn. Here I go again in 1841. Our next autumn is going to be, I'm so sorry everybody, the autumn of 1859. I'm confusing myself. This is terrible. With high pressure to the north, a low pressure to the south. Winds are in from here. It's gone, Gav's gone. Right, so be professional, Gav, be professional. The autumn of 1858 has high pressure to the north and low pressure to the south. Our next autumn is 1879. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm going to go and collapse in a minute. With high pressure to our west and northwest. Winds coming around the high from the north. The year of 1879 was an extremely cold year. This is a cold autumn within a cold year, so there is quite a bit of wintry weather going on during this autumn, especially by sort of November, which is a cold and wintry sort of month, I think. So yeah, just a continuation of what is a very cold year, dry and cold for the autumn of 1879. Our next autumn, following a spring in Wales precipitation range of 183 to 191 millimeters, is the autumn of 1891. This one very, very unsettled, low pressure out in the Atlantic. Probably not all that cold. In fact, it's probably quite a warmish sort of autumn, warm and wet for 1891. 1898 shows up next. This is a drier and warmer autumn, I think, with higher pressure just to our east, and we're bringing up the wind from a southerly or southeasterly direction in this autumn. So that's a drier and warmer autumn. And then we've got 1899 showing up next. This one also is relatively dry, anticyclonic signal, and a pretty mild autumn as well. Got the autumn of 1912 showing up next, following one of the worst summers of the 20th century. So the autumn of 1912 is a relatively drier season, actually, after a very, very wet summer. Things do dry out in this autumn. It's relatively quiet, perhaps a little bit on the cool side, especially later on. The next autumn is 1917. This is an exceptionally wet autumn, with low pressure to our north and income those westerlies. So that's a very wet autumn and quite cool too in 1917. Autumn of 1922 is a drier season with higher pressure over and just to the west of the country. So that's a relatively anticyclonic and dry autumn. And then we've got 1927 with high pressure around Greenland and low pressure across northern and western parts of Europe. This is a cooler, wetter autumn in 1927. Then we have 1934 showing up next. We saw it in the first analogs package for the CT. It's back again for England and Wales precipitation. This is a very important player in terms of the spring that we have just experienced. The autumn of 1934 with low pressure around Iceland, high pressure in the Atlantic. It's a westerly autumn, probably relatively mild, but a little bit unsettled. Autumn of 1955 is quite anticyclonic, dry and relatively warm, with high pressure over and to the west of the country. It's a continuation of the summer patterns. 1955 has a very, very extended summer, starts as early as like the middle to late spring, and goes on into September and October as well. So a relatively dry and warm autumn for 1955 after a hot summer and very extended summer. We've got the autumn of 1962 showing up next. How interesting is that one? We know what comes after the autumn of 1962, don't we? Yes. So anyway, this is how the autumn of 1962 looks. It's quite an anticyclonic autumn. It is quite a cold autumn as well. 1962 is a very cool year. The summer of 1962 is very cool. The autumn of 1962 is quite cold, especially again later on. And of course, we know what's going to happen in the winter after that relatively dry and cool autumn of 1962. Then we've got 1978 showing up next. This is another interesting year to be appearing, of course. So this one is a warm and dry autumn with high pressure over and just to the west of the country income the westerlies. So that's a relatively dry and warm autumn, very mild autumn in 1978 until like the last week of November, and then all of a sudden it begins to change dramatically. A long gap then from 1978 to 2004. So this is quite a warm autumn in 2004 and relatively dry in September and November, but it does have a wet October in 2004. And then we've got 2013, and this is another relatively dry but quite warm autumn as well. So this is a mild autumn and yeah, very westerly sort of autumn too. And then finally, we've got 2019. So this one is a wet autumn with low pressure centred over top of the UK and Ireland in combination with northern blocking. It looks like, you know, that would be an autumn that would be preceding a cold winter. But of course, 2019-20 is actually an exceptionally mild and wet winter with the polar vortex of doom. No sign of the polar vortex of doom during the autumn of 2019. Interesting, isn't it, how that polar vortex that we had in winter 2019-20 just suddenly appeared and ramped up. Actually, autumn 2019 does have northern blocking and quite a chilly and very wet November. Right, let's start putting all of that together then. So this is how all Septembers combined are looking, following a spring England and Wales precipitation range of 183 to 191 millimetres. Overall for the Septembers, unsettled, low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, winds in from the west. So on average, these Septembers are Atlantic driven and wet. All Octobers combined bring high pressure over and just to the west of the country, so a drier signal for these Octobers, if not particularly warm. All Novembers combined also have an anticyclonic signal. Again, the high pressure sitting over and just to the west of the country. Probably relatively mild with a lot of these Novembers, bringing in the wind from a westerly direction. Definitely dry for October and November, though. More unsettled, wetter for September. All autumns combined, following a spring England Wales precipitation range of 183 to 191 millimetres. It's hardly surprising, is anticyclonic with above average heights, high pressure centred over and just to the west of the country. A relatively dry and mild autumn is favoured, therefore. Just narrowing things down to look at the years post-1950, which gives us 1955, 1962, 1978, 2004, 2013 and 2019. All Septembers combined have higher pressure just to our west and southwest, lower pressure to our north, winds in from west direction. It's probably a drier and warmer signal, actually, for those Septembers after 1950. Still mainly dry and anticyclonic for the Octobers as well, with above average height centred over and just to the west of the country. So, again, a relatively dry and quite warmish signal for those Octobers. Bear in mind, we have got 2004 in there, which was quite a wet October, and 2013 actually got quite stormy towards the end, I think. But averaging it all out, more of those Octobers are anticyclonic than not. And then all Novembers combined look like this. Again, it's an anticyclonic signal. So I think what's coming through with this analogs package and the earlier analogs package to some degree, actually, is that this spring that we've had probably favours a relatively high pressure and anticyclonic dominated autumn, interestingly. So the Novembers again have above average heights centred over to the west of the country. Mild signal really, because we're bringing them in from a westerly direction into that area of high pressure. And then finally, this is how all autumns combined are looking, following a spring England and Wales precipitation range of 183 to 191 millimetres post 1950, and we tend to get high pressure centred over and just to the west of the country. It is an anticyclonic signal for those autumns. Relatively warm and dry autumn would be expected there, I think. Right, and we're done for this first autumn 2021 update. So we're going back. Hello. Right, so we're off and running. We're off and running now with our autumn updates. We shall see where we go from here. I think next week we'll be looking at May to autumn data. And yeah, as weeks go on, we're going to add in things like solar activity, the QBO, ENSO, you know, all of the things that we always look at, as well as like monthly data too. So it's going to be an interesting ride. We shall see where we arrive at the end of the season, at the end of August, when we release our autumn forecast. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where it all goes, isn't it? If you enjoy this first Autumn 2021 update, then please can you smash your like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment, let us know what you think. We're going to be back later on with GavsWeatherVids Roundup. We'll be live streaming from 6 o'clock. So Sunday live stream, so we're going to show you some long range. We're going to show you the CFS data, and also Patalpeng's analogues for the rest of summer, autumn, and winter 2021-2022. So I shall see you live from 6, but GavsWeatherVids Roundup before then. But the first autumn 2021 update, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.